prices in markets like Toronto and Vancouver moving further out of reach.
And they often try and brush it off. This is like some sort of naturally occurring phenomenon that, has just happened and everyone is powerless to do.
Impossibly unaffordable. Those are two words that a potential home buyer does not want to hear. And 2 of Canada's cities, again, make the top 10 most expensive city list in the world. And this is...
The buildings are still there. They're just no longer affordable.
It was affordable for us, but now they're not affordable anymore.
What's the cost and who pays when giant corporations move in?
Ever since I came to Canada, my biggest priority has been to buy a house here. But when I landed, the house prices were soaring so high that it was tough to pay the down payment and buy a house. The 2 most primary reasons for the soaring high prices in Canada has been the COVID and the influx of immigration in the recent years. With the COVID, the inflation rose to an unprecedented level. And with the immigration, there was a huge population to cater to. There were not enough houses to accommodate the growing population, and hence the demand increased, and hence the prices also increased. So this has been the case for most of these recent years, that the houses in Canada are not affordable for the general public. But there has been a shift recently for the good. Like, the inflation is now tamed. It is close to 2% now. So these shifts, like cuts in the Bank of Canada base rate and also Canadian policies on immigration to prevent overflowing population in Canada, have given us a time where we can now think that maybe housing will be affordable in the coming months or the coming years. This video particularly focuses on whether the housing will be affordable in 2024 and 2020. And we'll also try to get a sense of how the housing market will evolve with these shifts. Okay, let's start. We would answer this affordability question on the basis of 3 parameters. The first parameter is, will more rate cuts be happening by the Bank of Canada? Because the current rate cuts are not enough to make housing affordable again. The Bank of Canada base rate has reached to 4.25%, which is not up to that extent which can make the housing affordable again. The second parameter is to what extent the rate cuts can go. Like, what is the tentative end rates we would reach? With that level, will housing become affordable again? And the third parameter is, will the housing prices go down in 2024 and 2025? We will try to get a general purview of the situation. Okay, so let's start with the first parameter. Will more rate cuts happening by the Bank of Canada or not? To answer this question, I think yes, there will be more rate cuts happening, and I will present some of the factors why I think there will be more rate cuts happening by the Bank of Canada. Okay, so let's talk about these factors which might push the Bank of Canada to undergo more rate cuts. The first factor is the recent big cut of 50 basis points by the US Federal Reserve. So the Bank of Canada might look forward to keep itself in sync with its US counterpart. Now, even the Bank of Canada is not concerned for declining value of the Canadian dollar in comparison to the US dollar because of this big rate cut by the Federal Reserve. Here, in fact, you can see the relationship between the Bank of Canada rate cuts and the Federal Reserve rate cuts. See how closely they are related in the past with each other. Whenever there is a Federal Reserve rate cut, then the Bank of Canada follows that, or we can say that both of them follow each other pretty closely. The second factor is that the labor market is still weak. The unemployment rate in Canada is still high as compared to the pre-COVID times, and the Bank of Canada would try to address this issue. Now, the bigger challenge, I would say, with the Bank of Canada is not taming the inflation, but to address the unemployment rate. In fact, you can see that the unemployment has risen from 4.8% in July 2022 to the current level of 6% in August of 2024 as per the latest data from Statistics Canada. The third factor is the consistently decelerating inflation rate from 8.1% in June of 2022, to a target of 2% in August. So Bank of Canada has in fact addressed or tamed the inflation. For now, I am not sure about the future trends, but until now we can say that the inflation has been tamed or at least curbed to a manageable level. So hence, as I said, the bigger challenge for the Bank of Canada is not to tame the inflation, but to address or combat the rising unemployment rate. So all these factors like the oversized US rate cuts, consistently decelerating inflation that we are witnessing, and the weakened labor market, all these things sum up to one thing, that it is most likely that the Bank of Canada will go for further rate cuts. Okay, now that we are almost certain that there will be further rate cuts by the Bank of Canada, the question arises to what extent these rate cuts would happen. Like, what is the end point of these rate cuts by the Bank of Canada? Will it be 2%? Will it be 1%? So if we can predict or have a tentative idea for that, will be much useful for us to predict the affordability of housing market in Canada. Let's see. So this is my analysis. Like in this year, in 2024, we are left with 2 Bank of Canada meetings in which the rate cuts and fiscal policy discussions happen. So we can at least expect 25 basis point rate cuts in both of these meetings. Summarizing, this year we are yet to witness 2 more rate cuts of 25 basis points each, which takes the current rate of 4.25% to 3.75% at the end of the year. In fact, Tony Stillo, Director of Canada Economics at Oxford Economics, predicts that the end point for this cycle of cuts will be 2.25%. And guys, this is as per most of the economists, that the end point for these rate cuts will be around 2%. So based on our analysis, we anticipate the policy rate to be 3.75% by the end of 2024 and potentially 2.25% by the end of 2025. Okay, now we can anticipate by the end of the year, this is 3.75% that we can expect rates to go, and the Bank of Canada would stop at around 2%. But the real question is that will these rate cuts lead to reductions in the mortgage rate for houses? And if so, will these reductions in the mortgage rates for houses finally improve the affordability of houses in Canada? So to answer the question of whether with the reduction in the rate cuts by the Bank of Canada, the mortgage payments reduce or not, this is generally a yes. In most of the scenarios that we have seen in the past, when the Bank of Canada reduces the base rate, then we see a reduction in the mortgage interest payments also. Because see, what happens is the base rate is the rate at which different banks lend money to one another. So when this base rate reduces, then the interest rate at which these banks lend further to different individuals or businesses also reduces. Hence, mortgage interest rate reduces with the deductions in the base rate of Bank of Canada. But again, as I'm saying, it is most likely to have some reductions in the mortgage rates. But will these deductions be able to make the affordability better in Canada for housing? Because these are 2 different scenarios. One is you have lower interest rates, but affordability is another thing. So here we will try to gauge whether with these mortgage deductions, will affordability for housing improve in Canada or not? From my understanding, I can say that with the rate cuts and the reductions in the mortgage interest rate, affordability will not improve that significantly and that quickly. It will not be like we have reductions in the base rate, we have reductions in the mortgage, and the affordability improves. Because the real question here is not only the mortgage interest rates, but also the housing inventory. we talked about it. Like with the growing population, we do not have enough houses. So alongside the rate cuts and the deductions in the mortgage payment, we need to have a better inventory of housing to accommodate the population in Canada. Or we should have some solution on the population of Canada also. So now let us also try to understand the housing prices scenario in Canada. Like how is it going to be in the remaining months of 2024 and 2025? How can we check this? We will check this by using the data published by the Canadian Real Estate Association. So this is an association which publishes data on the real estate scenario or the housing scenario in Canada. And this is a trustworthy organization that we can use to get the data to base our analysis on. So just for your knowledge, the CREA publishes the data every quarter, and I'm taking this data from their July publication. So as you can see in this table, the national average home price is forecast to rise by 5% from 2024 to 2025. So currently in 2024, the national average home prices in Canada is 6,94,393, as you can see in the table. And in 2025, it is about to rise to 7,29,319. So this is a 5% rise that we are going to witness. Again, in this table, let's check the forecasted average prices for different Canadian provinces for 2023, 2024, and 2025. Also, we have the annual percentage change. For example, British Columbia in 2025 has an average price of 1,50,365, and this is 3.7% rise from that of 2024. So this data is also helpful in showing us that how these average prices are moving ahead from 2023 to 24 to 25. Another data that you could see here is the average prices of houses in 2024 and 2025 for these provinces. So in blue, we have the average price in 2024, and in orange, it is the average price in 2025. So as you can see, that British Columbia and Ontario will have the highest prices in 2025. Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Alberta have comparatively lower prices. However, when we observe the data for percentage change of average prices in different provinces, like what is the change of prices from the previous year to the current year, from 2024 to 2025. Then we see that provinces like Alberta and Saskatchewan have the highest price changes, forecasted with 7.9% for Alberta and 5.4% forecasted for Saskatchewan. So Alberta will have a 7.9% change in the prices from 2024 to 2025 because there's an influx of movement happening in Alberta. Like I'm also thinking of relocating to Alberta. Canada overall is forecasted to witness a price change of 5% in 2025 that we already talked about. So as we see that the prices are changing, and on an average, this is in 4% to 7% range, the prices of houses are most likely to go up, from my understanding and from the data analysis that we went through. Okay, so now let us take out the prime inferences from the discussions that we had on the house prices. First is that in 2025, the average price of houses in Canada will increase by 5% compared to 2024. Second is provinces like Alberta and Saskatchewan will witness the highest change in prices of houses with 7% and 5% respectively. 7% for Alberta and Saskatchewan has 5%. Third is the average price of houses will be the highest in provinces like British Columbia and Ontario. Again, from the data that we have taken from CREA, Canadian Real Estate Association, we will try to understand what is the expected sales activities happening in 2025, like with the rate cuts, with the inflation tamed, and with new policies, new mortgage rate policies also. So how is the sales activity looking? Let us see that. So this table is presenting the sales activity forecasted in 2025. The highest sales expected is in the provinces of Ontario and Quebec. followed by Alberta and British Columbia. This shows where people are interested to buying houses in 2024 and 2025. Okay, so now let's try to conclude our discussion. Do we think that with these rate cuts in its policy rate and the subsequent reductions in the mortgage interest rates, the housing affordability in Canada will improve? According to me, no. It will need further steps by the Canadian government and the Bank of Canada to improve the situation, because it is about housing mortgage rates, but it is also about improving the inventory of houses, because with the influx of immigration and the growing population, we need more houses to sustain the population, to accommodate the population. So this is one that needs to be solved. I mean, the housing inventory also needs to be solved along with the interest rates or the mortgage interest rates. Another thing is that we need better policies, and I will present a video on the new mortgage rates in Canada, and we'll try to delve further on what are the pros and cons of this new policy by the Bank of Canada. But we need more such steps by the Canadian government to stimulate the housing economy. So till then, let's see what happens. So thanks for watching. If you liked my video and the data presented, please like and comment. It will give me a boost and it will help me to do further good videos with deep research and present it to you in a non-biased fashion. So do like and subscribe. Thank you.